The throne room of the Lithari Empire was made of silver stone and blue light. It shone beautifully under the twin suns, but to Queen Valara, it felt cold and empty. She sat on her high throne, tall and graceful, but her heart was heavy like a star collapsing into itself. Once she had been called the Radiant Queen, a ruler whose smile could brighten an entire world. But now, her people called her the Silent One, for she had stopped smiling long ago. Years ago, during the Great War, her husband, King Renel, had vanished. He was not only her king, but her soul. Together, they ruled with kindness and courage. But when the Draxan armies came, he led their fleet into the final battle and never returned. His ship was lost among the burning skies of Virion, the battlefield of 1,000 dead suns. For a long time she had believed he was alive somewhere, fighting to return to her. Then, slowly, that hope turned into ashes. Every night she dreamed of his voice calling her name, and every morning she woke to silence. Her bed felt too wide, her palace too empty, and her heart too tired to keep pretending she was whole. Her people saw her as strong, but only she knew how broken she was inside. She ruled because it was her duty, not because she had any joy left to give. The war had ended, but peace felt like a stranger. Other empires had fallen, yet the Lithari still stood. The queen rebuilt her world, but her spirit remained wounded. That was when a new kind of visitor came, humans. Small, soft-skinned, emotional creatures from a distant blue planet. They came not for war, but for peace. They came offering trade, knowledge, and friendship. Valara had heard many stories about them, about how they were young and reckless, yet full of courage. Still, she did not expect anything special. When the human delegation finally arrived at her palace, Valara stood tall in her silver robes, her crown shining like moonlight. Her guards lined the halls, and the great doors opened. The group of humans walked in, led by their ambassador. They were respectful, nervous even, as they entered the heart of an alien empire. And then she saw him. He was just one of the guards, standing quietly behind the human envoy. His armor was plain, his helmet under his arm. His eyes were steady, his stance disciplined. But when Valara's gaze met his face, her breath stopped in her throat. For a moment, the world fell silent. He looked exactly like her husband. Not similar. Not close. Exactly the same sharp jawline. The same steady eyes that once made her feel safe. The same small scar just beneath his left eye, a mark Renel had gotten when he saved her during an assassination attempt centuries ago. Valara's mind trembled. Her heart began to race in her chest, something she had not felt in years. She thought it was a cruel trick, maybe a hallucination caused by exhaustion. But when he turned his head slightly, the way his hair moved, the way his expression softened, it was him. Her attendants noticed her sudden stillness. One of them whispered, "Your Majesty? Are you unwell?" Valara blinked, forcing her voice to steady. "No," she said softly, though her voice shook slightly. "Bring the envoy forward." The human ambassador bowed deeply, greeting her with polite words about peace and unity. Valara nodded, pretending to listen, but her eyes kept drifting back to the guard. The more she looked, the more her chest hurt. Finally, she couldn't hold back anymore. She turned her eyes directly to him. "You," she said. "What is your name?" The guard looked surprised. His hand tightened on his weapon. He bowed slightly and said, "Elias, Your Majesty." Elias Ward. The sound of his voice hit her like a memory from another life. It wasn't identical to Renel's, but the warmth, the calm tone, the respectful strength, it was so close it made her heart ache. "Elias," she repeated quietly, as if tasting the word, as if searching for the soul behind it. For a brief moment, their eyes met again, and something unexplainable passed between them, a strange, invisible connection neither of them understood. The ambassador continued speaking, but neither the queen nor the guard heard his words. Valara's heart, cold for centuries, had begun to stir again, and far away, deep in the quiet corners of her memory, something whispered, "I promised I would return." Elias Ward was not a man who believed in destiny. He believed in work, in rules, and in keeping people safe. His life had been a quiet rhythm of duty, missions, training, and long nights spent under cold stars. When he was chosen to serve as security for Earth's first alliance meeting with the Lithari Empire, he thought it would be another ordinary job. He had no idea that one look from an alien queen would change everything. When Elias first stepped into the throne room, the sheer size of it took his breath away. The glowing walls, the strange floating lights, and the tall figures of the Lithari made him feel small and out of place. But then his eyes found her, the queen herself, Valera. He didn't know her name yet. But the moment their gazes met, something inside him shifted. Her eyes glowed a soft violet, like twin stars shining through fog. Her face was calm, beautiful, but behind that calmness he sensed great sorrow. For a reason he couldn't explain, his heart tightened painfully, as if it remembered her before his mind did. When she spoke his name, Elias, he felt it. Not just heard it, but felt it deep in his chest. It was the strangest feeling he'd ever known. After the meeting ended, the human delegation was escorted to their quarters. Elias followed silently, trying to shake the strange warmth that had settled in his chest. His teammates laughed, joked, and talked about how incredible the alien palace was. But Elias remained quiet. His mind kept replaying the image of the queen's face, her trembling lips, the way her eyes softened when she looked at him. That night, he stood on the balcony of his quarters, staring at the alien sky. 2 moons hung above the horizon, their pale light reflecting off the glass towers. He couldn't sleep. His mind was full of questions he didn't know how to ask. Why had she looked at him like that? Why did her voice sound so familiar? And why, when he closed his eyes, did he see flashes of things he had never lived? Great silver ships, burning skies, and the sound of someone calling his name, ... Renel. He didn't know who that was, but the name echoed in his dreams. The next morning, he was summoned. A royal messenger appeared, tall and glowing with faint blue markings, and said the queen requested his presence. His captain looked surprised but agreed. You must have made quite an impression. Elias followed the messenger through long halls filled with light. The palace was silent except for the hum of distant energy. When the doors opened, he found the queen alone in her private garden, a place filled with silver flowers that shimmered like moonlight. She turned when she heard him, her long robes flowing like water. Her eyes held a strange mixture of hope and fear. "Elias Ward," she said softly, "your people are curious ones." He bowed politely. "Your Majesty, I'm just a guard. I don't know much about diplomacy." She smiled faintly. "You remind me of someone," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Someone I lost long ago." Elias frowned. "Don't understand." Valara studied him carefully. Every detail of his face tore open old memories. The way he stood, the way he breathed, it was all the same. Yet she could feel his soul was different, new. "You have his eyes," she said quietly, and his voice, even his scar. He touched the scar under his left eye, confused. "You mean the mark?" "I got that during training years ago." Her hands trembled. "He had it too," she whispered. The silence between them felt heavy, but not cold. It was full of something strange, recognition without reason. Elias felt his heartbeat quicken. He wanted to say something to break the tension, but no words came. He didn't know why, but he didn't want to leave. There was something in her presence that felt safe, like home, though he had never been here before. Finally, the queen spoke again. Her voice was gentle but carried deep pain. "Tell me, Elias, has your world ever found ruins? Strange objects buried beneath your soil? Machines not made by human hands?" He blinked. "Yes, ma'am. There are stories about that. Some say humans found fragments of old alien ships deep underground. Scientists believe they came from a forgotten war. Why?" Valara closed her eyes, a single tear falling down her cheek. "Because I think my husband's soul was sent there, reborn among your kind." Elias froze. He didn't understand what she meant, but her words made his chest tighten again. For the first time, he noticed the sadness in her eyes, the kind of sadness that came from waiting too long for someone who would never return. And though he didn't know why, Elias wanted to take that sadness away. He stood there quietly, under the alien sky, feeling the weight of something far older than himself. He didn't believe in destiny. But that night, destiny had found him. Elias Ward could not shake the dreams. At first, they were small flashes of silver ships cutting through burning skies. The roar of engines unlike anything human technology could create, and a voice calling his name. The voice was soft, familiar, full of love and command at the same time. He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, and tried to tell himself it was just imagination. But the visions kept coming, night after night. Every morning, he found himself staring at Queen Valara's throne room from the edge of the palace gardens, unable to stop thinking about her. The way she moved, the quiet power in her voice, the sorrow behind her glowing eyes, it all tugged at something buried deep in his memory. Something he had never lived but somehow remembered. He tried to dismiss it as admiration or maybe attraction, but it felt bigger, older. It's impossible to name. Meanwhile, Valara could not ignore the strange effect Elias had on her either. She found herself watching him when he walked through the palace halls. She noticed the curve of his lips when he smiled politely, the way his hand rested on his weapon, even the tiny scar beneath his eye. Each small detail brought her memories flooding back. Memories of Rhinal, her lost king, the love they had shared, the promises they had made. It was as if the universe had decided to return him to her. Though in a new form she could barely understand, she began to call him privately into her chambers. Under the guise of needing a guard for special tasks, each meeting was brief, yet her heart beat faster whenever he approached. The palace attendants began to notice the tension, whispering behind their hands. Valara ignored them. She could not control her emotions anymore. She had spent decades suppressing them, but Elias had reopened the door to her heart, and the flood could not be stopped. One night, unable to sleep, Valara walked to the palace gardens alone. The silver flowers glowed softly under the twin moons, casting a dreamlike light across the courtyard. She found Elias there, standing silently, staring at the distant horizon. "You are awake," she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. He turned, startled. "Your Majesty, I didn't know you would come out here." She walked closer, her hands brushing the petals as if seeking comfort. "I cannot sleep," she admitted. "Nor can you, it seems." He nodded. "I've been having dreams. Strange dreams I don't understand. I see places I've never been, people I don't know, yet it all feels real." Her eyes widened, reflecting the twin moons. "Tell me what you see," she said gently. Elias hesitated and began to describe the visions, the battles, the burning skies, the strange silver ships. He spoke of the voice calling him, and as he described it, Valara felt her knees weaken. She could not breathe. The dreams were Rhinal's memories. The human before her carried echoes of her lost husband's soul. Reborn in a form she could barely recognize, she reached out and touched his arm. The contact was electric, yet warm, as if some invisible thread connected their hearts. "Elias," she whispered, "I do not know how it is possible, but I feel it. I feel him, Rhinal, in you." He looked down at her hand on his arm, his chest tight with emotions he did not yet understand. I feel something too," he admitted. "A connection. Something older than my life. Something important." For a long moment, they stood in silence, staring at each other beneath the alien sky. The wind carried the soft hum of the palace lights, the scent of silver flowers surrounding them. It was as if time had stopped, allowing the lost and the reborn to find each other again. Valara felt tears sting her eyes. "I thought I had lost him forever," she whispered. "I have waited centuries and my heart had grown cold, but now I feel hope again." Elias swallowed hard, realizing that his dreams were not mere imagination. They were fragments of a past he had never lived but somehow remembered, guiding him to this moment. "Then, maybe I was meant to find you," he said quietly, almost afraid to voice it. The night wrapped around them, calm and still, yet full of tension and longing. The queen and the human guard, a man who seemed so ordinary yet carried the echoes of her lost king, stood together. Two souls bound by fate, destiny, and something older than memory itself. And somewhere deep inside, both of them knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The days passed slowly in the Lithari Palace. For Queen Valara, each sunrise brought a new struggle between duty and desire, between caution and hope. She continued her public duties with her usual grace, but her mind kept drifting to Elias. Every small gesture, every word reminded her of the husband she had lost centuries ago. And for Elias, the dreams grew stronger. They were no longer fleeting flashes. They were vivid, overwhelming experiences that left him breathless and confused. One afternoon, Valara summoned Elias to her private study. The room was warm and softly lit, walls lined with books and artifacts from across the galaxy. He entered cautiously, unsure what she wanted from him. "Sit," she said gently, motioning to a chair near the window. The twin moons reflected on her violet eyes, making them glow even brighter. "Elias, there is something I must ask of you." He nodded, sitting down, the weight of anticipation pressing against his chest. "Anything, Your Majesty." She studied him closely, noticing the subtle lines of stress on his face, the slight furrow in his brow. "Have you ever felt memories that are not yours? Moments from a life you never lived, yet they feel real?" Elias hesitated, swallowing hard. "Yes," he admitted. "Every night, I see battles, ships, voices, a life I cannot explain. Sometimes I wake up thinking I am someone else entirely." Her breath caught. This was it. The proof she had longed for, the connection she had feared, was impossible. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched his arm. "Then it is true. You carry him. Renel, his soul, his memories, somehow reborn in you." Elias stared at her, confusion and awe mixing in his expression. I don't understand. How can this be?" She shook her head, tears gathering in her eyes. "I do not know. I only know that when I look at you, I see him. When I hear your voice, it is his. And when you dream, you remember what he lived? I have waited centuries for this, and now, it seems fate has returned him to me." Elias's heart pounded. He wanted to deny it, to cling to reason and logic. But the dreams, the connection he felt whenever she was near, and the inexplicable warmth in her touch all told him that she was speaking the truth. And more than truth, it felt like home. Over the next few days, Valara spent more time with Elias in secret. They walked in the palace gardens, discussing the stars, the empire, and the strange fragments of his memories. Each conversation drew them closer, breaking down walls built by centuries of grief and distance. Valara laughed quietly at small jokes he made, a sound she hadn't heard in decades. And Elias in turn felt a pull he could not explain, an unspoken bond that seemed to tie his very soul to hers. But as their connection grew, so did the danger. The palace was full of eyes and ears, and rumors began to spread. Courtiers whispered that the queen favored a human, that she was losing herself to emotion. Valara ignored them, but a part of her worried. Could she allow herself to hope again? Could she risk her heart for a man who might only look like the one she had lost? One evening, as the twin moons hung low, Elias woke suddenly from a dream. He was standing on a battlefield, silver ships burning around him, the sound of Renel's voice calling out his name. He gasped, clutching his head, unable to distinguish the dream from reality. Valara found him moments later, trembling and pale. "Elias," she cried, rushing to his side. She held him gently, brushing his hair from his face. "It is only a dream. You are here. You are alive." He looked up at her, eyes wide and filled with fear and wonder. I remember everything," he whispered. "The battles, the faces, the promises I made. It's all real. I was him. I am him." Valara's tears fell freely now. She cupped his face in her hands, feeling the warmth, the life, the soul of the man she had thought lost forever. "Then it is true," she said softly. "You are Renel, and you have returned to me." In that quiet moment, beneath the glowing moons and silver flowers, the queen and the man who carried her husband's soul embraced. The memories, the love, and the centuries of loss converged into a single, undeniable truth. He was alive again, and their hearts could finally begin to heal. And somewhere deep in the palace, the wind whispered through the corridors, carrying the promise of a new beginning, one born from hope, fate, and love that had survived time itself. The Lithari Empire was not kind to weakness, and love, especially unexpected love, was often seen as weakness. Word of Queen Valara's unusual closeness to Elias, the human guard, spread through the palace like wildfire. Courtiers whispered in shadowed corridors. Ministers cast wary glances during council meetings, and the royal advisors exchanged uneasy words. "She spends too much time with him," said one, adjusting the insignia on his chest. "A human, a foreigner. Our queen cannot allow her judgment to be clouded by sentiment." Valara overheard nothing, but her attendants noticed her hesitation, the quiet tension in her steps. She did not care for gossip, yet she could not ignore the subtle fear in the eyes of her people. They had followed her for centuries, trusted her wisdom, and yet some could not comprehend the bond she had formed. The whispers were harmless for now, but they could grow into a storm. Elias felt it too. He noticed the suspicious looks, the stiff posture of guards who once smiled, and the subtle murmurs behind closed doors. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he meant no harm, but he understood. Humans were different, outsiders in this alien world. And yet, every time he looked at Valara, his chest tightened, reminding him that he could not walk away, not now, not ever. One afternoon, a group of ministers approached Valara in the grand hall. Their faces were grave, their voices formal, yet the tension in the room was palpable. "Your Majesty," one said, bowing stiffly, "the council requests that you reconsider your attachment to this human guard. His presence is causing unease among the ranks. Our people may question your judgment. The stability of the empire could be at risk." Valara's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and sorrow. She had ruled for centuries, faced countless battles, and survived betrayals that could have shattered empires. And now she was being questioned for her heart. "Am I to rule without emotion?" she asked softly, yet every word carried steel. "Is my loyalty only measured by my ability to ignore what I feel? Do you not trust my judgment?" The ministers hesitated, unsure how to respond. Valara's violet eyes, once calm, now burned with quiet power. She turned on her heel, her robes flowing like liquid light, and walked from the chamber, leaving them murmuring among themselves. Elias, waiting in the corridor, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, are you all right?" he asked gently, his voice full of concern. She stopped, looking at him, and for a moment the weight of her crown and centuries of loss seemed lighter. "I am," she said, touching his hand briefly. "But I fear the Empire may not understand. They may see our bond as a threat, even though it is the one thing keeping me alive." Elias shook his head. "They do not matter. You are the queen, and whatever you feel is yours. I will stand by you, no matter what they say." Her heart ached at his words. Here was a man who was supposed to be a simple guard, yet he carried within him the courage and soul of someone far greater, her lost king, Rinal. She felt tears prick her eyes, but she forced them back. She had faced wars, betrayal, and death itself. She could face the fear of her people too. Yet even as they stood together, a shadow loomed beyond the palace walls. The Draxan, the rival species who had once shattered the Lithari fleet, had learned of the queen's unusual attachment. They saw a weakness where there was none, a chance to strike while the heart of the empire was distracted. Valara sensed it before the first. Attack came, a subtle tension in the air, the hum of distant ships approaching the capital. She looked at Elias, her hand resting on his arm. "They will come," she said, her voice steady but low. "They will try to take advantage of my heart." Elias clenched his fists, determination lighting his eyes. "Then we will face them together," he said. "I don't care who they are or what they think. I will protect you. Always." Valara looked at him, feeling a strange mix of fear, relief, and hope. The council may doubt them, the empire may whisper, and enemies may gather, but here, in the quiet strength of their bond, She felt a fire ignite inside her chest, a fire she thought had died centuries ago, and in that fire, she found the courage to face what was coming. For the first time in decades, she no longer felt alone. The storm of whispers and doubt would come. The Draxen would strike. But the queen and the human who carried her lost king's soul were ready. Together, the attack came without warning. One moment the sky above the capital world was calm, twin suns reflecting softly off the silver towers. The next, the clouds roared with fire as Draxen warships tore through the upper atmosphere. Alarms blared across the palace. The citizens of the Lithari Empire scrambled for safety. Queen Valara's heart pounded in her chest. She had faced threats before, but never like this. Never when her soul felt so exposed, so vulnerable. She rushed to the throne room, gathering her advisors and the remaining guards. Her eyes searched for Elias. He was already there. The human guard, the man who carried the soul of her lost king, stood at attention, weapon in hand. His posture was calm, disciplined, yet there was a fire in his eyes she had never seen in any ordinary human. It was Renal's fire, the same courage and resolve she remembered from centuries ago. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "stay behind me. I will protect you." Valara's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him she didn't need protection, but she knew the truth. She could fight a war with strategy, but Elias. He was the shield she needed, the living echo of her lost love. The Draxen descended upon the palace with merciless precision. Explosions shook the towers, and the silver walls cracked under the plasma fire. Guards fell, some screaming, some silent. But Elias moved like a force the enemy had not expected. He lifted a fallen Lithari energy blade, the same kind her husband once wielded, and it hummed as if recognizing him. He fought with strength and skill that no human should have possessed. Each movement was precise yet powerful, slicing through the enemy with grace and determination. Valara watched in awe, her heart aching and swelling at the same time. This man, human in flesh, yet royal in spirit, was saving her and her people, Elias. She called out, fear lacing her voice. "You must be careful." He turned for a brief second, a soft smile on his face. "I will not let them harm you, Valara. Not now, not ever." The battle raged for hours. The Draxen forces were relentless, but Elias never wavered. He moved through the chaos as if guided by memories. He had never lived, memories of battles fought long before his human life began. He shielded Valarea, fought off enemy soldiers, and inspired the remaining Lithari guards to hold their ground. Finally, the last of the Draxen ships retreating into the darkness of space, their attack foiled by the unexpected strength of a human guard. Elias collapsed near Valara, his body trembling with exhaustion, his uniform scorched and torn. She ran to him, dropping to her knees beside him, tears streaming down her face. You saved us," she whispered, her hand trembling as she touched his face. I thought we might lose everything." Elias smiled faintly, his eyes closing as he felt her warmth. "I could never let that happen," he murmured. "Not while you're here. Not while you're alive." Valara held him close, pressing her forehead to his, feeling the pulse of life and courage that flowed through him. The palace was scarred, the city wounded, but she was alive, and so was the man who had become more than a guard, more than a human. He had become her protector, her companion, and in every possible way, the living echo of her lost king. For the first time in centuries, Valara felt her heart truly open again. She no longer felt alone. She no longer felt the weight of time pressing her down. In the middle of destruction, in the midst of a city under siege, love and courage had returned to her life. As the smoke cleared and the distant hum of retreating ships faded, she whispered softly, almost to herself, "You are Renal, and you are here. You have returned to me." Elias opened his eyes, looking into hers, and for a long moment, words were unnecessary. The battle had ended, but something greater had begun, a bond that even time and war could not destroy. And in that moment, the queen and the man who carried her husband's soul understood a truth older than empires. Sometimes, love fights harder than armies and courage shines brighter than the stars. The palace was quiet for the first time in days. Smoke still rose from broken towers, and the city bore the scars of battle, but the Draxan threat had passed for now. Queen Valara stood on the balcony of the throne room, her eyes scanning the horizon, twin suns glinting off shattered glass and silver stone. Her heart still raced, though not from fear this time. Elias Ward lay on a nearby couch, bandages wrapped around his arms and legs, his uniform torn but his eyes bright and alive. Watched her with something she had not seen in centuries: peace, relief, and love. She walked over slowly, her hands brushing against the fabric of her robes, still unsure how to face him. He had saved the palace, defended her, and revealed memories that neither of them fully understood. And yet, the moment she looked at him, she no longer saw just a human guard. She saw Ronel, her lost husband, returned in a body she could touch, a heart that beat beside hers. "Elias," she whispered, her voice trembling, "are you truly here?" He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Valara, I remember everything now. The battles, the promises, the love we shared. I am him, or at least a part of him lives within me. I came back to you, even across time and worlds." Tears streamed down her face, and she fell to her knees beside him. "I thought I would never see you again," she said, her voice breaking. "I have waited centuries, and I almost gave up. And yet, here you are, alive, real, mine." Elias took her face in his hands, brushing the tears from her glowing violet cheeks. "I promised you, Valara. Even if it took lifetimes, even if the universe itself tried to keep us apart, I would return." Her heart surged. For decades, she had felt the cold weight of loss, the emptiness that no crown or empire could fill. And now the warmth of his touch, the certainty of his words, began to heal the centuries of grief. She clung to him, feeling the pulse of life in his body, the echo of the man she had loved, and the hope for a future she had thought impossible. The palace attendants and surviving guards watched silently, their awe and wonder evident. Some whispered among themselves, but Valara ignored them. The whispers of the Empire no longer mattered. Politics, fear, and doubt could not touch this moment. Only the truth remained. Her lost king had returned in a new form. Yet wholly him in every meaningful way, Elias pulled her into a gentle embrace, and for a moment the world outside ceased to exist. The fire and destruction of the battle faded, replaced by the soft glow of the twin moons through the palace windows. The air smelled faintly of smoke and silver petals, yet it was sweet, charged with life and hope. "You are home," she whispered against his chest. Feeling his steady heartbeat, "And you are mine," he replied. "No matter what shape the universe gives me, I will always find you. Always."